You're listening to Player Development, a channel focused on the intersection of sports and character growth. Please like and subscribe to support the stories being shared, the growth of our listeners, and to stay up to date with our latest content. Hey everybody, it's Isaiah again, and we are back with another installment, and again we're talking about COVID, again we're talking about the NFL. We did another sequel recently on what was going on with Enes Kanter Freedom and his appearance on Fox News. So I figured why not do another sequel too. So today we're following up what we talked about before with Aaron Rodgers and his misrepresentation of his vaccination status, acting as if he was vaccinated when he actually was not. Turns out this past week there were 3 other players in the NFL who also misrepresented their vaccination status and were misleading about it. Antonio Brown of the Buccaneers, Mike Edwards, also of the Buccaneers, and I want to say John Franklin III, if I got the name right, who is currently a free agent. And all 3 of these players have been suspended for 3 games, their next 3 games. And in the case of Franklin, that's assuming he gets signed by some team, he would have to sit the first 3 games that he'd be eligible for, is my understanding. This has caused a little bit of consternation, at least in my mind, and I haven't seen much response from sports media so far, but we'll see where that goes. Rodgers was fined $15,000. He was not suspended for any games. And the Green Bay Packers organization was fined $300,000. Okay, so not an insignificant sum. But the only game that Rodgers was forced to miss was the one following his COVID test, his positive COVID test, which means that for all intents and purposes, he was not forced to sit out any games past what he would have if he just tested positive without any of the extra layers surrounding it. And these 3 players now, the 2 on the Buccaneers and the 1 free agent, are all suspended for 3 games without pay, which means they are losing more money, and their team actually suffers from not having them available for those 3 full games, even beyond if they had just tested positive for COVID. Now, Antonio Brown was reported to have bought a fake vaccination card. I don't know whether that's somehow considered more serious of an infraction by the NFL, but there are a couple pieces to consider here. First is that Aaron Rodgers is white, and these 3 players are black. I don't know if the discrepancy in their disciplinary actions are motivated by race. There was definitely some backlash when the NFL originally announced the disciplinary actions in Rodgers' case, that a lot of teams felt that the Packers organization got away with knowing that he was not vaccinated and tolerating that, as well as just letting him get off without any further suspension and a very minor fine. So there potentially could be something racial about having a white player, admittedly an MVP and a superstar, get off really lightly for misrepresenting his COVID vaccination status, and 3 black players being suspended for 3 games as teams are jockeying for playoff position for what seems on the surface to be the same infraction. Another thing we need to consider is that in looking through the NFL and NFL Players Association publications on what the COVID protocols are for this season, there wasn't anything very clear about misrepresenting a player's vaccination status. There was being misleading during contact tracing interviews. There was talk about not being vaccinated and acting as if you were vaccinated, going to events unmasked, things of that nature. But there was nothing specific about pretending to be vaccinated while you were not, and misleading either your organization or the NFL in general. So disciplinary actions can be handed out by the team or by the NFL. And this is where it gets a little tricky, because it was not the Buccaneers that imposed these suspensions on their players. It was a sentence, if you will, handed out by the NFL, as was the case in Rodgers' situation. And so you have the same governing body, the NFL, applying its rules unequally, using potentially a gray area that was not strictly defined at the beginning of the season to have some latitude in how they punish that particular infraction. So, what do we do with this then? I don't know that it's racially motivated. I don't know that it's preferential treatment of the Green Bay Packers organization compared to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers or any other team in the NFL. I'm not privy to any of those conversations or anything like that. Or maybe there are other factors that are in play that haven't been reported in news outlets. What I hope happens is that there's more clarity from the NFL about how they're going to approach situations like this. Because now you've had at least 4 players who have intentionally been misleading or outright lied about their vaccination status. And so with that precedent, let's open up that conversation and be clear about this is how the NFL is going to treat that. And other sports leagues may take their cue from that as well, that if it's happening in the NFL, it's hard to imagine that it wouldn't happen in other leagues as well. So using this as an opportunity to be clear about the reasoning first behind the different punishments, and then moving forward to be more upfront and clear about this is how we are going to approach these kinds of infractions, so that we can work towards more equitable treatment of all players involved, which would hopefully, in one sense, help PR in not making it look like a racially based determination, as well as helping players, coaches, and organizations, as well as fans, be clear on what's going on and what they can expect.